We need a starter. I need to come up with something clever, witty to say.
You can always add it in later.
It's transfer modes. Hey, and welcome back to Teaching After Effects. In this episode, we're stepping away from the visual effects shots we've been doing, and we're going to look at something that's kind of fundamental to After Effects, which is transfer modes. Now, if you're familiar with Photoshop, a lot of this same stuff is in there too, but I thought it's worth having a look at here. So I've already got this comp set up for you. If you grab hold of the grid that I've set up and just drag it around, you'll see what each of these squares do. That layer is being added on. So we've got white, grey, black, and that's showing you how it affects the image below. And then we've got screen and multiply. These are the three most common ones. Now, I'm flashing up some definitions of what each one means. You don't really have to worry too terribly much about the official definition, but the reality is, add will make things super bright, so it's great for laser beams or lightsabers, that sort of thing. Screen is a more subtle way of bringing some lightness to the image below, so that's pretty good for fire and things like that. And multiply is the opposite. Multiply will remove darker areas from the overlaying image and display them in that way, if that makes sense. So if you've got something with a black background, you'd use screen. If you've got something with a light background, you'd use multiply. So hopefully that makes sense. You can drag that off the edge of the screen if you want for now. Yeah, just leave it up there. So I've got some stock footage that I've brought in, and if you can see, if you bring in fire multiplied and just drop that onto the layer for the moment and scrub so we can see it in the timeline. This is ideal stock footage. It's a shot of fire with the background removed. So that's kind of what fire you would expect to look like if there was real fire there. Obviously there's no reactive lighting or anything. But, you know, if you want to set this park on fire, that's the sort of thing you could use. Now, you've zoomed out slightly, so if you go back to the fit, where it says 50%, and set it to fit to 100%. There we go. So, imagine, though, that we've got some stock footage that doesn't look like that, that doesn't have the background removed, or we've shot our own stuff. So if you turn off fire pre-multiplied for a moment, and drag in fire no matte. This is more typical of what you'd expect. We've now got the problem, how do we best remove the black from here? And the answer is, transfer modes is by far the best option. So we've got the transfer modes column visible. If you see the bit at the bottom that says toggle switches / modes, you just click on that. That might be what you see when you first open After Effects, the other view. So don't worry, if you see that, all you have to do is hit toggle switches and modes. And then where it says normal in the drop down, let's change this initially to add. And you can see what it's done. It's all the black is now invisible. It's all gone. But you can sort of see it's made like a hyper bright version of the fire, which is, it doesn't quite look right. So if you now change that to screen, now we've got a less bright one. It feels possibly closer to the rest of the image, certainly in terms of exposure. But again, it's not quite right. Now, if you click back into the screen, there are loads of options here, and you'll have to, each shot will determine the right one to look for. There isn't one right answer. So you just have to sort of work it out from there. If you go and grab Explosion MOV and drag that in, this is another bit of stock footage. So now this is a really good example of why you would use transfer modes and not try to key out the black. If you go to Effect,
where? Yeah.
At the top.
Oh.
And keying. Now we've got loads of different options here. I'd probably use something like extract here. Actually, I wouldn't. I'd use transfer modes, which is the whole point of the video. But if I was trying to do this, I might try to use extract. If you now increase the black point, you can see the problem of trying to use keying to get rid of a bright thing like an explosion, and also a soft edge thing like an explosion or like fire. We get an edge that's really hard to deal with. And that's why we would use a transfer mode instead. So if you delete extract now, just hit the delete key or turn it off. And now let's instead switch on, use the transfer modes for normal and see. Let's just try a different one. Let's try linear dodge. Yeah, that's not perfect either. Maybe even just stick with screen. Okay, and if you put that into the sky so we could see it a little better. Yeah, I mean, that already looks like something maybe being blown up in orbit. There's sort of that faded. So there's work to be done, but that's why you would use transfer modes for things like that. Now, if you turn off all the fire and everything for right now, one cute thing that we can do is, you know those shots in movies where they will overlay a newspaper and you will see the text through, but you'll see it, or the Indiana Jones style map.
Okay.
So to do that, I've got a newspaper JPEG. If you drag that in. So obviously that's a photo of, I think from Pixabay actually, and we now want to see the map through it. So again, we've got lots of different transfer options. If you click on normal again, and now try something like overlay. There. So we're getting the text, we're getting the map, and if you keep just switching through a couple of the different options like soft light and hard light. That's sort of giving, that's possibly a better one. It's giving us a proper sense of the newspaper, but with the picture underneath. And obviously if that was a moving map or something like that, you'd get a stronger sense of it.
Can I not scroll through them?
Oh, I don't think you can. Try. No, because the arrow, the up and down arrow keys change the position. So now one thing you could try is if you go to hard light and just go on to multiply, because we haven't seen that one in action yet. It's doing a stronger job, but it's also made the image darker. Now, this layer, transfer modes, also work with effects. So you could set it to something like multiply and then put a curves effect on there to tweak it so that it becomes stronger in the darker colours and lighter in the lighter colours. So I've already got some text written out, and it's just the text tool with a transparent background. Let's bring in something like the fire from before. It can be either one. And yeah, if you scale it up so that the video completely covers the text. And remember, if you hold shift, it will stick to the same aspect ratio. There we go. Now, if you drag the fire layer below the teaching layer, the other part of within the transfer modes is we've got the track matte column, and you see where it says none right now. If you switch that on to click on that and choose alpha matte, what that's going to do is it hides, if you've noticed, it's turned off the teaching layer, but it's using the teaching layer's alpha channel to cut out the channel below. So now we get fiery text saying whatever we want. And of course, being a text layer though, it's all dynamic. It's not like I've copied and pasted the alpha channel. So I can change the text and it will update. So that becomes then another really powerful tool. Now, there's 4 track mattes to have a look at. We've got alpha, which is exactly what we're doing. Alpha invert flips that. So we cut out the words from that text. And then we've got 2 more. Luma matte's an interesting one. Set it to off for now.
What?
Set it to no track matte.
Right.
And move fire above teach. And now set the teach track matte to Luma matte. And if you turn off the transparency, the checkerboard. So what we're now doing is we're using the luminance values of the fire to cut out the layer below.
Okay.
You get this cool look of the fire.
Cool.
Yeah. And that is transfer modes and track mattes.